Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a Chinese fighter jet is attempting what seems impossible, landing right on the deck of a U.S. aircraft carrier in the middle of the vast ocean. The alarm sounded, sending the entire crew into a panic, while the whole world held its breath watching. Amid escalating tensions between the U.S. and China, this story is no longer just fiction. This could be a pressure tactic by China, but if that happens, how will the U.S. respond? What serious consequences could arise if such a bold move takes place right before our eyes? Although the idea of a Chinese fighter jet suddenly landing on a U.S. aircraft carrier sounds unbelievable, it is by no means impossible. It could be that this pilot intended to defect, or there was a navigation error, or even a deliberate provocation designed to test the resolve and response capabilities of the United States. And the most frightening thing is that even an unintentional action can trigger a full-scale crisis if the parties involved do not have a clear resolution mechanism in place. When faced with an unauthorized landing, the crew of the U.S. aircraft carrier will immediately go to battle stations. The onboard air traffic control center will attempt to contact the unidentified aircraft, requesting identification and an explanation of its purpose. If the aircraft does not respond or continues to approach, the fighter patrol squadron will scramble immediately with the mission to intercept and escort the unknown aircraft out of the sensitive area. At the same time, the onboard command center will activate emergency procedures, alert nearby naval units, and notify the shore-based operational command centers. The United States will also make efforts to promptly contact the Chinese side to clarify the situation and prevent misunderstandings. Such misunderstandings could escalate into a serious crisis if left unchecked. This is not just a military response, but also a race against time to prevent an incident from escalating into a full-scale conflict, where every decision is measured in seconds. The United States possesses a powerful fleet of aircraft carriers, each one like a floating city, housing formidable military and strategic strength that cannot be underestimated. With thousands of well-trained sailors, they are ready to respond to any threat, whether from the air, the sea, or land. Meanwhile, China has made significant breakthroughs recently in the field of military aviation. They possess a range of fighter jets, from domestically produced J-10s and J-11s to advanced stealth fighters like the J-16 and J-20, designed to compete directly with Western fighters such as the American F-15, F-16, and F-35. Although Chinese fighter jets have demonstrated impressive capabilities, they still have certain weaknesses. However, what few people realize is that China's low-level disruption strategy can exploit the U.S.'s weaknesses in reaction time or complex rules of engagement, turning what seems like a minor action into a significant strategic leverage. So, in your opinion, how should the U.S. respond if this situation occurs? Should it take a tough, strong stance, or try to ease tensions through diplomacy? This is not just a military story. It is also a test of crisis management and conduct in the relationship between two superpowers facing critical turning points. This decision will shape not only the future of U.S.-China relations, but also the global security order. A wrong move could trigger an unpredictable domino effect. Let's closely follow and analyze this further, as it is not simply a trial by fire at sea, but also reflects the complex dynamics in today's global geopolitical landscape. Please share your thoughts in the comments section below about the historical precedents and related comparisons. Although a Chinese fighter jet landing on a U.S. aircraft carrier is unprecedented, similar incidents have occurred in the past, providing valuable lessons. For example, in 1988, a Soviet Mi-8 helicopter landed on the USS Yorktown, a decommissioned American aircraft carrier which was anchored in the Black Sea during a goodwill visit to the Soviet Union. This incident, later determined to be a misunderstanding, caused a minor diplomatic tension between the two powers, but was quickly resolved through open communication and a shared desire to avoid escalating the conflict. This highlights the importance of maintaining clear and reliable communication channels between opposing military forces, even in the face of provocative actions. However, the biggest difference between the Cold War era and today is the speed at which information spreads and the complexity of economic relationships. A minor incident can be blown out of proportion into a global crisis within just a few hours. Another example that can be mentioned is the 2001 mid-air collision between a U.S. EP-3 reconnaissance aircraft and a Chinese J-8 fighter jet over the South China Sea. The damaged American aircraft was forced to make an emergency landing on China's Hainan Island, leading to an 11-day standoff between the two sides. This incident has heightened tensions between the U.S. and China, while also highlighting the risks involved in operating military vessels in close proximity within sensitive maritime areas. This shows that even unintentional incidents can escalate into a political hostage crisis, forcing the parties involved to seek complex diplomatic solutions amid growing public pressure. It's imaginable that if a Chinese fighter jet were to illegally land on a U.S. aircraft carrier, the consequences would be extremely serious, both diplomatically and militarily. That action will be considered a serious violation of international norms and a direct challenge to U.S. sovereignty. On the diplomatic front, the United States will demand an immediate explanation and apology from Beijing, creating a serious crisis. The impact of this event is not limited to bilateral relations, but also extends to regional partners. Key security allies and partners in the Asia-Pacific region, such as Japan, South Korea, Australia, and the Philippines, will be closely watching as this incident could shift the security balance in the area. Clearly, regional security faces a major challenge if similar actions occur. This event will be the ultimate test for the U.S. alliance in Asia, forcing countries to take a side or risk facing increased pressure from China in the future. It will expose the underlying cracks within the alliances. Before we continue, Power Insider would like to invite you to join our channel as a member. This not only helps us continue producing engaging videos about the U.S. Navy, but also serves as a way to honor the veterans who have always supported our channel. Please click the link in the description or go directly to the channel page and select Join. Thank you all very much. And now, let's get back to the main topic. A Chinese fighter jet attempting to land on a U.S. aircraft carrier is not just a simple act of provocation. It also escalates the relationship between the two countries and regional security into a state of high tension. This script reminds us of historical lessons, the risk of unexpected conflicts, and the necessity of wise diplomacy, along with effective crisis control mechanisms to prevent a military accident that could have unpredictable consequences on the world map. Not only limited to military tensions, this event could also trigger a covert economic war, impacting global supply chains, financial markets, and even international investment confidence. Imagine a tense scenario: a Chinese fighter jet attempting to land on a U.S. aircraft carrier. In this situation, America's allies and partners who rely on Washington's military presence to maintain stability and deter aggression will be called into action. They not only provide diplomatic support, but can also share intelligence or contribute military forces in a coordinated response to prevent the escalation of conflict. The capabilities and determination of these countries siding with the United States will be the key factors in shaping the regional balance of power and deterring any further provocative actions. Will the Allies unite in support of the United States, or will some hesitate due to economic interests with China? This is the moment when the loyalty and strategic vision of nations will be put to the test. However, this scenario also puts allies in a difficult position, forcing them to choose a side or clearly define their stance. In particular, in some countries with close economic ties to China, participating in actions that could be perceived as provocative must be carefully considered. This poses a risk of causing tension within regional alliances, as well as between the United States and its partners, potentially fracturing the cooperative network that has long been established. Furthermore, this story raises important questions about the role of international law and standards in regulating military activities and preventing conflicts. This event will serve as a typical case forcing the international community to reconsider the effectiveness of existing conventions in addressing gray area actions below the threshold of armed conflict. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. UNCLOS provides the legal framework for the use of the world's oceans, clearly defining the rights and obligations of countries in international waters. According to UNCLOS, warships and military aircraft have the right to freedom of navigation and overflight in international waters, but they must comply with imposed restrictions, respect the rights and safety of other parties, and must not threaten or use force against the sovereignty or political independence of any country. If a Chinese fighter jet were to land illegally on a U.S. aircraft carrier, it would be a clear violation of U.S. sovereignty and pose a direct threat to the safety of the crew on board. The United States has a solid legal basis to condemn this action as a serious violation of those principles. However, whether China will accept this interpretation of UNCLOS or use its own reasoning to justify its actions, thereby setting a dangerous precedent for similar behavior in the future, remains to be seen. This will be a fierce legal battle on the international stage. In this context, organizations such as the Association of Southeast Asian Nations (ASEAN) and the East Asia Summit (EAS) will play a crucial role as forums for regional countries to engage in dialogue, build trust, and develop common approaches to address security challenges. The United States and China can also continue bilateral talks to seek solutions for easing tensions and maintaining order and peace in this already highly sensitive region. The U.S.-China strategic and economic dialogue is designed to address shared issues while seeking solutions to minimize the risks of misunderstandings and miscalculations in order to prevent the escalation of tensions and conflicts. In that context, the scenario of a Chinese fighter jet landing on a U.S. aircraft carrier is not only a shocking event, but also poses unpredictable risks to regional and global security. The biggest challenge is whether existing diplomatic mechanisms are strong enough to handle such a blatant act of provocation, or if we will witness the failure of multilateral diplomacy when confronted with the political will of a superpower. Even if the initial incident is successfully contained, the ongoing tensions and mistrust between the two sides will pave the way for future crises and confrontations. Immediately following the event, both the United States and China will undoubtedly enter a dramatic phase of diplomacy aiming to manage public opinion and rally support for their respective positions. The United States will demand an official apology along with clear commitments from China, while Beijing may seek to downplay the significance of the incident and might even accuse the U.S. of provoking the confrontation. If these initial diplomatic efforts fail to address the root of the issue, there is a real risk that prolonged and escalating tensions could occur. The United States may be forced to implement stronger measures to assert its resolve and prevent further provocations, ranging from increasing its military presence in the region to conducting more assertive freedom of navigation patrols. A single mistake or an overreaction from either side could quickly escalate the situation beyond control, drawing in other countries and destabilizing the entire Asia-Pacific region. This scenario isn't just about who wins or loses, but about whether the world has enough wisdom to avoid a major conflict that no one wants. In a scenario where a Chinese fighter jet attempts to land on a U.S. aircraft carrier, the role of intelligence and surveillance becomes especially critical. Both the United States and China use a diverse system that includes satellites, drones, and reconnaissance aircraft to monitor each other's military activities and gather critical intelligence. Before the incident, U.S. intelligence agencies were tasked with clearly assessing the intentions and capabilities of the Chinese military. This includes analyzing operational patterns, intercepting communication signals, and tracking the movements of key ships and aircraft to build a comprehensive picture of China's deployment and combat readiness. This provides U.S. leaders with a solid foundation to anticipate and respond promptly to any potential provocations. Similarly, Chinese intelligence will also focus on monitoring U.S. naval activities, especially the deployment of aircraft carriers in sensitive areas such as the South China Sea. They will be interested in information about the defense system's flight operations and combat readiness levels of U.S. aircraft carriers to prepare for potential confrontations. This intelligence data not only helps Beijing formulate its strategy, but also contributes to increasing vigilance and strategic competition between the two superpowers. This raises the question of the cat-and-mouse game in the intelligence arena, where each side tries to exploit the other's weaknesses without crossing the red line into direct conflict. What seemed like an action movie script event was not only a challenge to military capability, but also a rigorous test of diplomacy and crisis management between the United States and China in an increasingly complex and volatile world. Strategic and economic dialogues have become an essential bridge, helping both sides find common ground and preventing a moment of loss of control from turning into a global disaster. But can they truly manage the stress? Or will they get caught in an endless cycle of confrontation? Only time will tell. After the incident, both China and the United States immediately ramped up intelligence operations to assess and identify potential vulnerabilities. This includes intercepting communication signals between Chinese pilots and the command center, analyzing radar and satellite images, as well as monitoring social media forums and open sources to gather valuable information. Thorough preparation and rigorous training play a crucial role in the U.S. aircraft carrier crew's ability to respond quickly when confronted with a Chinese fighter jet attempting an unauthorized landing. American personnel undergo extremely rigorous training courses, along with regular practical exercises, to be fully prepared to handle any emergency situation, including hostile actions or unauthorized intrusions. Operating a squadron on an aircraft carrier is an extremely complex process that requires seamless coordination between air traffic control, the deck crew, and the pilots. In cases of unauthorized landings, all these units must work closely together to assess the situation, communicate with the intruding aircraft, and implement appropriate defensive measures. General training exercises are conducted not only within the U.S. Navy, but also in coordination with allies, simulating real-life scenarios such as intercepting enemy aircraft or preventing missile attacks. These exercises help strengthen skills and identify areas for improvement. However, the psychological pressure on pilots and crew members in a real situation can be much higher than in training exercises, especially when every decision could determine the outcome of a war. In a world that is becoming increasingly multipolar alongside shifts in the balance of power, keeping communication channels open and promoting diplomacy has become more important than ever. The United States and China, the two largest economies and military powers in the world, bear a special responsibility to reconcile their differences and work toward common goals, such as combating climate change, advancing global health care, and maintaining regional stability. In the field of naval operations, this means establishing clear rules for engagement, regularly exchanging information about planned activities, and developing mechanisms to de-escalate tensions during crises. Both parties also need to commit to transparency by providing advance notice of major drills and deployments to avoid misunderstandings and unwanted confrontations. Looking ahead, the U.S.-China relationship will continue to be a mix of cooperation and competition. Although the two countries have different interests and values, they still share the necessary steps toward a safe and sustainable world. The United States and China, two great powers with shared interests in global peace and prosperity, can build a more stable and secure future by focusing on common concerns and working to establish mutual trust. When looking at the bigger picture, we must not forget the human aspect in such events. The sailors on the U.S. aircraft carrier and the Chinese fighter pilots are not just anonymous adversaries, but individuals with their own dreams, worries, and aspirations. Understanding each other's perspectives and working toward a common goal is the key to minimizing the risk of conflicts arising from misunderstandings while also maximizing the benefits of collaboration. But what other potential scenarios could unfold between the military forces of the two sides? What steps should the U.S. and China take to prevent unwanted incidents? Please share your thoughts and ideas in the comments section below. If you found this video helpful and want to continue exploring more about the U.S. Navy, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the Power Insider channel to stay updated with more exciting content. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again in the next video. Press the notification bell so you never miss an update.